Hello, and welcome to the virtual on-demand Baltimore Red Line Open House. I will guide you through the display boards from the Maryland Transit Administration's October 2024 open houses. I will provide an overview of the information for each board. If you would like to see the content in greater detail, I encourage you to either pause this recording or download the PDF file. After reviewing the materials, we hope you will click the survey link in the video description to share your feedback. The Baltimore Red Line project background. The Baltimore Red Line has a long history leading up to the historic relaunch of the project by Governor Wes Moore in June 2023. The Red Line was identified as a corridor needing a major transit investment in the 2002 Regional Rail Plan. Over the next decade, the MTA advanced the Red Line through the federally required environmental process of alternatives analysis and completed the federally required environmental documentation. In 2009, the locally preferred alternative of the Red Line was identified. This solidified the prior Red Line alignment through Baltimore and the use of light rail. After completing additional required environmental documentation, the Federal Transit Administration approved the project's implementation through a record of decision in 2013. Maryland also applied for and was awarded $900 million in highly competitive federal funds through the Capital Investment Grants, or CIG, program. Following the record of decision in 2013, the project was canceled in 2015, and the federal government rescinded or took back the record of decision along with the competitive federal funding previously awarded. The need for the Red Line was then reaffirmed in the Central Maryland Regional Transit Plan in 2020 and the East-West Corridor Feasibility Study in 2022. Since its relaunch in 2023, the Red Line project has built upon the prior studies, extensive technical work, and community engagement previously conducted. In June 2024, light rail was announced as the recommended mode for the Red Line. Community engagement, where we've been. Since the Baltimore Red Line relaunch in June 2023, the project team has heard from over 5,500 people through 9 open houses, over 50 pop-up and community events, over 30 community association meetings, 3,700 completed surveys, and comments submitted through the website. The map on the screen shows comments from the public by geographic location. To reach more people, the Red Line team has also completed door-to-door outreach to over 200 houses to help get the word out about the project. The Community Advisory Team, or CAT, was launched in June 2024 to advise the Red Line team on approaches and methods for successful local engagement. Made up of 25 to 30 members, the CAT brings a range of voices and perspectives from groups and neighborhoods living, working, and investing along the Red Line transit corridor. Community engagement, where we're going. In 2025, the Red Line team will work with stakeholders and communities to update the Community Compact, a living document created in 2008 to guide how the Red Line will best support communities. To update the Community Compact, the team will first evaluate progress made on prior commitments and involve Baltimore City and county agencies, stakeholders, and elected officials. The update will revisit and revise the strategies for strengthening communities, supporting economic empowerment, fostering a healthy environment, and managing construction impacts. In addition to updating the Community Compact, the Red Line team will continue using multiple ways to reach communities along the Red Line corridor. Pop-up events will be used to meet people where they are in their daily travels. Community events, fairs, and festivals will be a way to reach large groups of people from the broader community. Community association meetings will be valuable ways to answer community-specific questions. Online resources like the website, project electronic newsletter, and social media will continue to provide up-to-date and on-demand information and a place to find background resources and materials. To reach Spanish-speaking community members, engagement activities will continue to be supported by Spanish-speaking team members, multilingual website options, and translated project materials. Light rail transit recommended for the Baltimore Red Line. A key step in moving the Red Line project forward was Governor Moore's announcement of the recommended mode in June 2024. The recommendation of light rail transit for the Red Line was based on 9 measures of effectiveness and community and stakeholder input. The display board highlights key differentiators that support the recommendation of light rail transit, or LRT. The first key differentiator is ridership and capacity, with up to twice the projected daily ridership on LRT compared to BRT. While the capital cost for LRT is higher, the higher capacity and ridership of LRT result in a lower capital cost per trip than BRT. The comparison of end-to-end travel time slightly favors LRT. Considering equity, LRT is projected to serve twice as many trips from households that do not have access to a car as compared to BRT. In addition to these measures, the community input revealed a strong public preference for LRT. What is light rail transit, LRT? LRT is a rail-based transit mode that can run at road level on elevated tracks or bridges and in tunnels. The MTA currently has LRT on the Central Light Rail running north and south through Baltimore County, Baltimore City, and Anne Arundel County. Modern LRT vehicles powered by overhead electrical wires feature lower floors than our existing trains, making them more accessible and eliminating the need for steps to get inside. The picture on the left side of the display board shows the conceptual aerial view of the modernized LRT recommended for the Red Line project. The picture on the right shows a closer view of the station platform, depicting a road median running LRT with a center platform. The images along the bottom of the display board highlight various aspects of the conceptual LRT station. Designing to move people more efficiently. Two factors critical for advancing the design of the Red Line's alternatives are modal hierarchy and person throughput. A modal hierarchy prioritizes different modes, including those who are walking and those who are riding a bike, taking transit, or driving a car. This prioritization helps guide decisions on allocating space in a roadway or allocating time at a traffic light. Person throughput measures how many people can travel on a road or a traffic lane. This assessment of the number of people who can travel through a traffic lane differs from simply counting the number of vehicles. Baltimore's modal hierarchy places people walking at the top, including those with mobility disabilities using a device like a wheelchair. The second level of hierarchy includes cycling, public transit, and micro-mobility vehicles like a scooter. The third level of the hierarchy consists of taxis, commercial transit, and shared vehicles. The fourth and final level of the hierarchy includes single-occupant vehicles. The modal hierarchy is included in Baltimore City's Complete Streets Manual, which directs how the transportation projects in Baltimore City are to be prioritized, planned, and designed in line with the Baltimore City Complete Streets Ordinance passed in 2018. Complementing this legislation at the city level, the Maryland Department of Transportation passed a statewide Complete Streets policy in 2024, which facilitates the planning, design, and construction of transportation options that are safer and more accessible to all users of all ages and abilities. The street and transit design options for the Red Line alternatives will follow the Baltimore City Complete Streets Law and the Maryland Department of Transportation's statewide Complete Streets policy. The graphic on the right of the display board shows how person throughput varies for different types of lanes, including private motor vehicle-only lanes, mixed traffic lanes, bike lanes, dedicated bus lanes, sidewalks, or on-street transit ways for either buses or rail vehicles. The private motor vehicle and mixed traffic lanes have the lowest person throughput, or are the least efficient roads for moving people, while two-way protected bikeways have a higher person throughput than private motor vehicles or mixed traffic lanes. Sidewalks have the second highest person throughput of those measured. An on-street transit way can move considerably more people than the dedicated transit lanes because it has fewer disruptions to the flow of transit vehicles from parked cars and trucks or turning vehicles. The QR code on the top right of the display board will take you to a helpful animation to show a person's throughput in action. In addition to deciding how to allocate space in a roadway, it is essential to distribute the appropriate amount of green light time to each mode of transportation. One way to be flexible about the distribution of green light time is to use Transit Signal Priority, or TSP. This upgrade to signalization systems improves transit efficiency and reliability by adding critical seconds to the end or beginning of a green light to allow approaching transit vehicles through an intersection. Intersections throughout the Red Line corridor will be equipped with TSP. Alternatives under consideration. 3 alternative alignments are under consideration, including Alternative 1, which has tunnel segments, and Alternatives 2A and 2B, which do not include tunnels. All 3 alternatives travel between the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, in the west, and the Johns Hopkins Bayview Hospital in the east. Alternative 1, called LRT Tunnels, is shown in red on the map graphic and closely resembles the 2012 preferred alignment. It includes a transitway, or dedicated right-of-way in the road for transit vehicles along Interstate 70 and Boston Street. Alternative 1 also uses a tunnel under Cooks Lane and downtown. The extents of the tunnels are shown on the map using dotted red lines. Alternative 2A, called LRT Surface North, is shown in black on the map graphic. It uses a transitway along Security Boulevard and mixed traffic operations along Cooks Lane. Through downtown Baltimore City, Alternative 2A uses a transit couplet that follows Lombard Street for westbound travel and Baltimore Street for eastbound travel. Alternative 2A uses a transit couplet through eastern Baltimore City that follows Fleet Street for eastbound travel and Eastern Avenue for westbound travel. Alternative 2B, called LRT Surface South, is shown in blue on the map graphic. Like Alternative 2A, it uses a transitway along Security Boulevard and mixed traffic operations along Cooks Lane. However, unlike Alternative 2A, Alternative 2B uses a transitway along Pratt Street to traverse downtown Baltimore City. Additionally, Alternative 2B uses a transitway on Boston Street. The legend on the graphic indicates how different guideway types and station types, including major stations or transfer points, are represented on the map graphic. The surface alternatives have 3 more stations than Alternative 1 along the downtown tunnel. Additionally, Alternative 2B and Alternative 1 have 1 more station than Alternative 2A in southeast Baltimore. Western route considerations. 2 routes are being considered along the western end of the project, between Maryland 122, Security Boulevard at I-695, and I-70 at Cooks Lane. Alternative 1, LRT Tunnels, proposes the LRT along the south side of Security Boulevard, west of I-695, and then bridges over I-695 to the I-70 right-of-way. The LRT is proposed on the north side of I-70. Alternative 2A, LRT Surface North, and Alternative 2B, LRT Surface South, propose the LRT on the median of Maryland 122, Security Boulevard, and along this roadway until reaching Cooks Lane. All 3 alternatives support the Security Square Mall redevelopment and reconstruction of the I-70 interchange and park and ride. Alternative 1 requires a new structure over I-695 and proposes stations along I-70, along the back of the existing development. Alternatives 2A and 2B require the reconstruction of the I-695 Security Boulevard interchange. Alternatives 2A and 2B propose the LRT along Maryland 122, which supports higher development opportunities and provides access to additional destinations compared to Alternative 1, including trails for pedestrian and bicycle users. The map shows the alignments for the 3 alternatives and the types of guideways, surface, elevated, or tunnel, being considered. The map also includes callouts describing the alternatives and illustrative typical sections along the different alignments. Tunnel versus surface considerations on Cooks Lane from I-70 to US 40. Along Cooks Lane, between I-70 and US 40, Edmondson Avenue, the Red Line is considering tunnel and surface running LRT options. Alternative 1 proposes a tunnel from within the footprint of the existing I-70 interchange to US 40. The tunnels include twin bores, approximately 1 mile long and 30 to 110 feet deep. this alternative does not make any modifications to Cook's Lane. Alternatives 2A and 2B propose a surface-running LRT in mixed traffic along Cook's Lane. This alternative proposes that the LRT operate on the same lanes as general traffic and remove parking on the east side of the street. The map shows the alignments for the three alternatives and the types of guideways, surface, elevated, or tunnel, being considered. The map also includes callouts describing the alternatives and illustrative typical sections along the different alignments. Cook's Lane Tunnel versus surface considerations. One consideration when comparing the option to use a tunnel to the option to run LRT on the surface is the impact on available street parking. The proposed surface alternatives include removing the parking on the east side of Cook's Lane and maintaining the parking on the west side, which has 125 spaces. According to parking surveys covering both sides of Cook's Lane on weekdays and weekends at different times of day, there were a maximum of 7 parked vehicles on Cook's Lane. Another consideration is upgrading the existing infrastructure provided by surface alternatives. As detailed on the right side of the display board, this includes roadway resurfacing, streetlights, traffic signals, signage, bicycle and pedestrian facilities like crosswalks, and improved ADA accessibility. A third consideration is the total cost of designing and building the tunnel or surface alternatives. The total cost for the Cook's Lane Tunnel is estimated at $540 million, and the total cost for the Cook's Lane surface segment included in alternatives 2A or 2B is $120 million. The final consideration listed on the display board is the travel time for the Red Line in this segment. Using a tunnel along Cook's Lane is estimated to save 1.5 minutes of travel time per trip compared to the surface alternatives. US 40 alignment from Cook's Lane to West Baltimore Mark. All three alternatives propose a median running LRT along US 40 between Cook's Lane and the West Baltimore Mark station. The LRT repurposes the existing raised median and one travel lane in each direction along US 40 and maintains 2 travel lanes per direction, plus on-street parking at select locations. All alternatives include an operations and maintenance facility along the south side of Franklin and a transfer station at the West Baltimore Mark station. The map shows the alignments for the three alternatives and the types of guideways, surface, elevated, or tunnel, being considered. The map includes callouts describing the alternatives and an illustrative typical section along the alignment. US 40 options from Cook's Lane to Fremont Avenue. A range of options are being evaluated along the freeway section of US 40. 3 alignment options exist between the West Baltimore Mark Station and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. The first option proposes single tracks along Franklin Street and Mulberry Street to operate as a couplet on either side of the freeway. Station platforms would be placed on either side of the freeway and will require considerable walking distance between the opposing directions. This option is incompatible with Alternative 1 LRT tunnels and requires structures over US 40 to connect the LRT from Franklin Street to MLK Boulevard. This option also results in 10 at-grade intersections with the LRT, increasing travel time, reducing reliability, and requiring gates, bells, and flashing lights at these crossings. The second option proposes both tracks along Franklin Street. Like the first option, this is incompatible with Alternative 1, but requires 2 additional structures over US 40 to connect eastbound US 40 to Franklin Street and Franklin Street to MLK Jr. Boulevard. This option also results in 10 at-grade intersections with the LRT, increasing travel time, reducing reliability, and requiring gates, bells, and flashing lights at these crossings. The third option proposes both tracks along the median of US 40. This option requires stair towers and elevators to access the station. It repurposes an existing eastbound travel lane of US 40 along the freeway section and is compatible with all 3 alternatives. The map shows the alignments for all three alternatives and the different options being considered. They also include callouts identifying challenges for the previous options. Route and tunnel versus surface considerations in downtown. Within the downtown area, the three build alternatives propose different routes and surface and tunnel options. Between US 40 and President Street, Alternative 1 proposes a tunnel following Fremont Avenue and Lombard Street. The proposed tunnel comprises approximately 3.2-mile-long twin bores, including portions under Fleet Street and Boston Street, explained on the next board. The tunnel's northern portal would be in the median of US 40. Alternative 2A proposes that the LRT continue along US 40 and turn south onto MLK Jr. Boulevard. Along MLK Jr. Boulevard, the LRT would operate as a bi-directional transit way, running on the west side of the roadway. The LRT would then operate as a couplet along Baltimore Street eastbound and Lombard Street westbound. The existing bus-only or one-travel lane will be repurposed along Baltimore and Lombard Streets to accommodate the proposed LRT. Alternative 2B proposed that the LRT continue along US 40 and turn south onto MLK Jr. Boulevard. Along MLK Boulevard, the LRT would operate as a bi-directional transit way running on the west side of the roadway. The bi-directional transit way would turn east on Pratt Street and continue east to connect to President Street. The existing bus-only or one-travel lane will be repurposed along Pratt Street to accommodate the proposed LRT. This layout is consistent with development opportunities in the Inner Harbor. The map shows the alignments for the three alternatives and the types of guideways, surface, elevated, or tunnel being considered. The map also includes callouts describing the alternatives and illustrative typical sections along the different alignments. Route and tunnel versus surface considerations in downtown. The build alternatives propose different route, surface, and tunnel options within the downtown area between President Street and the Canton neighborhood. The presented map and alternatives continue the previous board. Alternative 1 proposes a tunnel downtown from Lombard Street, continuing south parallel on the west side of President Street and then turning east under Fleet Street. The proposed tunnel then turns southeast along Boston Street, with the portal on the median surfacing south of Hudson Street for approximately 3.2 miles. Alternatives 2A and 2B propose that the LRT be turned south on President Street with a median running LRT. Both alternatives propose that the LRT operate as a transit couplet along Eastern Avenue and Fleet Street, repurposing the existing travel lane and converting these roadways to one-way operations. Eastern Avenue would be one-way westbound, and Fleet Street would be one-way eastbound. On both roadways, the LRT operates on the south side and maintains parking on one side of the road outside station areas. Alternative 2A continues the transitway couplet along Eastern Avenue and Fleet Street to the railroad right-of-way east of Haven Street in Highlandtown and Greektown. Alternative 2B turns southeast to Boston Street, like Alternative 1, but on the surface, the LRT operates along the roadway's median. The map shows the alignments for the three alternatives and the types of guideways, surface, elevated, or tunnel being considered. The map also includes callouts for describing the alternatives and illustrative typical sections along the different alignments. Downtown tunnel versus surface considerations. The display board describes 4 considerations of the surface alternatives in this segment. One consideration is that the surface alternatives include upgrades to adjacent existing surface transportation infrastructure, including roadway resurfacing, drainage and utilities, streetlights, traffic signals, signage, bicycle and pedestrian facilities like crosswalks, and improved ADA accessibility. A second consideration is the alterations to traffic patterns. To accommodate the surface operation of the Red Line, Alternatives 2A and 2B would alter traffic patterns on Fleet Street and Eastern Avenue. Fleet Street would be converted to an eastbound-only street, and Eastern Avenue would be converted to a westbound-only street. However, these changes only occur on the Fleet and Eastern sections with Red Line operations. Starting from President Street, Alternative 2A travels on Fleet and Eastern until the railroad right-of-way between Highlandtown and Greektown. However, the alignment for Alternative 2B only travels on Fleet and Eastern between President Street and Chester Street. Alternative 2B does not include alterations to the traffic patterns of Fleet Street and Eastern Avenue east of Chester Street. A third consideration is repurposing the space used for existing dedicated bus lanes into space used for transitways for the Red Line along the alignments of the surface alternatives. For Alternative 2A, this will impact the existing dedicated bus lanes on Baltimore and Lombard Streets through downtown. Alternative 2B will impact the existing dedicated bus lane on Pratt Street through downtown. Introducing the Red Line's east-west service, including the downtown segment, is an opportunity to adapt the existing bus network to create a more robust transit system. To accomplish this, the existing bus network would be modified to better feed into the Red Line and reduce any duplicate service. A final consideration is parking impacts, which would be higher for the surface alternatives. Between President Street and Haven Street, tunneling in Alternative 1 would lead to a loss of 120 to 130 parking spaces. The surface alignment of Alternative 2A would impact 620 to 690 parking spaces, and the surface alignment of Alternative 2B would impact 380 to 410 parking spaces. For both surface alternatives, the parking impacts include 40 to 50 residential permit spaces, which would be relocated where feasible. For Eastern Avenue and Fleet Street, parking spaces would be maintained on one side of the street, except near the proposed Red Line stations, where there would not be space for on-street parking. The project analyzes the potential for 2 parking garages to mitigate the impact on on-street parking. Downtown tunnel versus surface considerations. Travel time differs between the alternatives. 3 factors that determine overall travel time from your origin to your destination are the time it takes to access the station, the time it takes to reach the platform, and the time while riding the Red Line. The time it takes to access the station substantially impacts travel time. The surface alternatives provide 3 additional stations within the limits of the proposed downtown tunnel included in Alternative 1, which results in shorter spaces between stations and therefore shorter walk times to reach a station. The platform's location in the station impacts the time it takes to reach it. Surface stations are more visible and more accessible compared to the underground stations that require escalators and elevators. For Alternative 1, which includes tunnels with underground stations, 2.5 to 3 minutes are added to a trip's travel time to account for getting to the platform. This amount is doubled if you consider the way back up from the platform after riding the Red Line. Using a tunnel reduces the time riding the Red Line. For example, Alternative 1 is about 7 minutes faster than the other options for traveling downtown between the West Baltimore Mark Station and the Fells Point Station. The transit travel times for each alternative for both this segment and the segment between Charles Center and Bayview are shown at the bottom of the display board. The length of a trip is so important to consider when assessing the differences in trip travel times. Travel time while riding is important to the overall time needed for a long trip. For a very short trip, the time spent riding is less significant, and instead the time spent accessing the station and reaching the platform are the key contributors to overall trip travel time. For the Red Line, more than 60% of Red Line corridor trips are less than 2 miles, and more than 80% are less than 4 miles. Downtown tunnel versus surface considerations. This display board reviews 4 additional considerations that show differences between the tunnel and surface alternatives. First is the potential connection with the existing central light rail. Alternative 2B includes a connection to the existing central light rail that could allow the MTA to share vehicles and maintenance facilities between the two lines. While Alternative 2A is on the surface through downtown, it does not include a connection to the Central Light Rail due to the sharp turns in limited space that would be required. The second consideration is that the surface alternatives provide 3 additional stations than Alternative 1 within the limits of the proposed downtown tunnel. This improves access to major residential, entertainment, and educational destinations near those additional stations. The additional stations are Heritage Crossing Station west of downtown, Marketplace Station in downtown, and the Chester or Alisana Station near the southwest corner of Patterson Park. Another consideration regarding LRT service on couplet streets, which includes one-way travel on a pair of 2 parallel streets, is the reduced operational flexibility in case of incidents. While traveling on couplet streets, the 2 tracks are not next to each other, and LRT vehicles cannot change tracks to avoid a blockage or other issues. This situation can increase the need for a bus bridge to maintain Red Line service. While Alternative 2A has 3.4 miles of couplet streets, Alternative 2B has 0.9 miles. The final consideration on this display board is that the surface alternatives are more resilient to extreme weather events and the effects of climate change. Within Alternative 1, the location of tunnel headhouses, ventilation shafts, and portals make the tunnel more vulnerable to flooding during significant storm events. Downtown construction considerations. The following 2 display boards address the construction considerations for the surface alternatives and the tunnel alternative through downtown. Alternatives 2A and 2B would involve construction along the surface of existing roadways and new right-of-way. The track would be completed one segment at a time, but in many locations simultaneously. When construction occurs on existing roadways, temporary changes to traffic operations would be made to maintain traffic flow. This would be comparable to the approach used for more traditional roadway construction projects. Still, the construction timeline would be longer due to the more specialized construction methods associated with an LRT project. In addition to the track assembly and concrete work, other construction activities associated with the surface alternatives include transit stations, parking, stormwater management facilities, and track crossings at intersecting streets and driveways. Utility relocations and installing the overhead wire system and other support systems like the traction power substations are also being completed. Downtown construction considerations. The downtown tunnel construction in Alternative 1 would involve surface alternative construction activities and some elements that add complexity, risk, cost, and time to the project. The tunnel construction will use a tunnel boring machine, or TBM. The portal for launching the TBM will be in the median of US Route 40, and the portal for retrieving the machine will be on Boston Street. The construction of the tunnel portals will require approximately 2 acres to accommodate both the portal itself and the staging area, and it will require careful management of the noise and dust during construction. Once launched, the TBM would begin excavating from west to east, running 24 hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week. The excavated material would be transported to the western portal area and hauled to another site. Engineering controls would be used to appropriately deal with any contaminated soils. The underground stations and vent shafts must be constructed from the top down. This will include extensive excavations in the public streets and the relocation of major underground utilities. Temporary traffic diversions will be used to maintain travel around the excavation sites. Southeast Baltimore considerations from Canton to Bayview. Various conceptual alignments are being evaluated on the corridor's east end to respond to developments over the past 10 years. The range of alignments covers the area between Canton and Bayview. Significant challenges in this area complicate a direct connection between the Red Line and the Johns Hopkins Bayview campus. Alternative 1 and Alternative 2B propose the LRT along the median of Boston Street before reaching the area still under investigation. Alternative 2A approaches the area under investigation along Eastern Avenue and Fleet Street, operating as a transit couplet. These alternatives must continue east to connect to the Bayview campus and the future MARC station. This area has established neighborhoods and experienced significant residential and commercial development growth following the previous Red Line alignment. Development growth continues within vacant parcels, reducing alignment options without more significant impacts. Other physical constraints make it difficult to accommodate an LRT system, including the 3 active railroad operations, Norfolk Southern, CSX, and Canton Railroad, and 2 interstates, I-895 and I-95. These crossings require grade separation, and existing structures do not meet design requirements, vertical clearance, load capacity, and width, to accommodate an LRT without major rehabilitation or reconstruction. The map shows the alignments for the 3 alternatives approaching the eastern end of the Red Line alignment. The map identifies areas where alignment options and station locations are under investigation. Measures of Effectiveness Table. The table shows the different measures of effectiveness for each of the 3 alternatives. For many measures, the value of each alternative includes an estimated range. What's next? Selecting an alternative. While LRT has been selected as the recommended mode for the Red Line, other project alternative decisions must still be made. The map graphic on the display board identifies 6 study area locations where engineering and alignment options are being evaluated. These options relate to the Red Line's route and the decision between tunneling and traveling on the surface. The National Environmental Policy Act process. In 1969, Congress passed the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. The purpose of NEPA is to ensure that the federal government considers the potential impacts of its actions on the human environment. This is accomplished by requiring federal agencies to identify and address potential disproportionate and adverse effects of their actions on disadvantaged, minority, and low-income communities. As a recipient of federal funding, the MTA must satisfy these requirements for the Red Line project. To complete the NEPA process, the Red Line must prepare a supplemental environmental impact statement that builds upon the previous environmental analyses completed for the Red Line. The process for preparing this environmental document and securing a decision from the federal government on the Red Line is shown on the display board. The first step is to initiate the NEPA process by developing a purpose and need, engaging with other government agencies, and beginning to develop alternatives. The purpose and need for the Red Line are explained on the next display board. The second step of the process is to collect data analyzing existing conditions in the project area, identify studies needed to obtain more information, and begin preparing the supplemental environmental impact statement. The MTA is currently in the Analyze Alternatives step, during which the purpose and need are used to screen alternatives, and the environmental impacts of the other options are analyzed. The next step is to publish the environmental document for public comment. The document will identify the preferred alternative, and the public hearings will be held to accept comments. Following the review of public comments, the final step of the process is to publish the final environmental document and make a decision as to what alternative will advance. This step includes preparing the final environmental impact statement that addresses comments from the public. The federal decision determines how the Red Line can move forward. The Baltimore Red Line Purpose and Need. The purpose and need of a project identify the problems a proposed project would address and state what the project sponsor is trying to accomplish. The purpose and need guide project decision-making and are the foundation of the environmental review process. Following the relaunch of the Baltimore Red Line in 2023, it was determined that the purpose and need described in the 2008 environmental documentation remain consistent with the project today. The current purpose and need are based on the same mobility and community development needs previously studied and are updated to reflect the current conditions, policies, approaches, and recent public involvement in the project. The Red Line's project purpose is to provide high-frequency, high-capacity transit service in the corridor in a manner that improves transit efficiency, increases access to transit near work and activity centers, enhances connections among existing transit routes, provides transportation choices for the east-west commuters, and supports economic development and community revitalization. The project need that continues to exist in the project study corridor are efficient travel times and enhanced reliability to meet current and future transit demands, convenient transit access to existing and future employment and activity centers, high-capacity transit options to meet current and future transit demands, connections to and from existing transit routes, including Central Light Rail, Metro, MARC, and the bus network. Supporting the purpose and need, the MTA has also identified 2 project goals. The first is to support community revitalization and economic development opportunities. The second is to support regional goals of improving air quality and promoting environmental stewardship, sustainability, equity, and resiliency. Other projects in the corridor. Many other important transportation projects are underway within the Red Line corridor. The display board shows 8 projects led by different agencies or entities and indicates their location on the map graphic of the Red Line alternatives. MTA will continue coordinating the development of the Red Line with these projects to maximize their collective benefit. The first project, starting from the west, is the Security Mall redevelopment, which aims to transform the underutilized mall into a vibrant community hub. This is a critical station location for each of the 3 Red Line alternatives. The Frederick Douglass Tunnel project, led by Amtrak, will implement track and tunnel improvements to address the largest rail bottleneck in the Northeast Corridor, and will also provide a new West Baltimore MARC station, which is located within the corridor of the Red Line project. The West Baltimore MARC Station TOD study will focus on bringing community-supporting transit-oriented development to this key transfer station along the Red Line corridor. Baltimore City is leading West Baltimore United, a planning study that will explore options to reconnect historically Black communities that were divided due to the construction of the US 40 Franklin-Mulberry Expressway in West Baltimore. The study area for this project is shown on the map graphic with a yellow rectangle. This year, MTA was awarded Rail Vehicle Replacement Competitive Grant Funds to update the existing light rail fleet with modern low-floor rail cars. The proposed downtown Rise and Inner Harbor redevelopment will transform the Inner Harbor with new residential, commercial, and public spaces. MTA's RAISE East-West Priority Corridor project is currently in the design phase. It includes improvements such as transit priority treatments like dedicated bus lanes and pedestrian safety investments that help people safely cross the street and get to and from bus stops. The Baltimore Greenway Trail is a 35-mile trail network linking diverse neighborhoods, cultural amenities, and outdoor resources. Finally, the Eastern Baltimore County Access Study assesses options to connect from the Baltimore Red Line's eastern terminus to points east in Baltimore County. Staying engaged. We want you all to stay engaged and informed about the Red Line project. To get more information about the project moving forward, we encourage you to visit the project website and sign up for email updates from the project team using the link and QR codes on the display board. Stay tuned to the project's social media accounts by following us at Redline Maryland. Finally, please complete a comment card to provide feedback using the QR code on the display board or by going to redlinemaryland.com. We appreciate your participation in the Red Line's public engagement efforts and look forward to working together on the Red Line.